Hello and welcome to the Oak Road Hatter podcast, your home of Luton fan content produced by Luton fans for Luton fans. On today's episode we're talking all things Luton's trip to Northampton Town, and as always I'm joined by Adam Driscoll to talk about it. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I've got over Saturday's result after a night out after the game to sort of get over it, and I'm looking forward / I'm ready for another game on Saturday against another solid League One side in Northampton Town, as we mentioned.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased you've got over Saturday. I think I have as well. But we're going to look at Saturday's game, but we're not looking at it with too much optimism. I don't think we're looking at it as another game that's there, and what can we do basically? I don't think many of us are expecting a win. So yeah, it's a funny old situation, isn't it?
Yeah, they're a side that are pretty established in this division now. They've been here a couple of seasons now. Initially under John Brady, who we were linked with before we brought in Jack Wilshere, and a lot of people were not pleased with that connection. Although he did a fairly decent job there, given the resources he had. He got them out of League Two into League One. It's a fairly local game, which is nice. At least those of us going don't have to go too far to watch it. So it's just down the road for most people. But they are, as I mentioned, a well-established side, and they've got a pretty solid squad. As at the time of recording, they're above us in League One. They're 11th, which could change because they have a fixture happening as we speak, away from home against Reading, which is currently 0-0 at half-time, and I'm sure that will change it in the second half. But yeah, they're above us in the league, as are 13 other sides now in the division. So if we're talking about that every episode, it will be a pretty repetitive. But before that, I just wanted to talk about a comment that we had on our last podcast, because a Mansfield supporter called Roy Stagg 6344 commented saying, "Mansfield supporter coming in peace. Firstly, your supporters were so good after the match, absolutely brilliant banter. Secondly, although I'm only judging on one game, I thought Luton were okay, and I don't underestimate teams in this league. 70% of these teams would survive the Championship. It's a very difficult league. What are your expectations?" So I thought we'd respond to that on the podcast, because we discussed it off camera, that it's pretty interesting that it said 70% of the sides in this league would survive in the Championship, which I guess is a slightly damning indictment of us last season, but also says a lot more about how much of a challenge this actually will be this season, and maybe going into it we're underestimating the other sides a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree with the 70% of teams would survive the step up, because I think you are talking about a big gulf in finances, albeit not the step to the Premier League. But I get the general point that teams in this league are predominantly organised and structured. Teams that come up from League Two have the same structure and organisation, and tend to do reasonably well with regards to survival. On the other hand, teams that drop down into League One from the Championship, it's not the place they want to be. We've seen historically, the likes of Sunderland drop down and struggle to get out, and just look at what we're doing right now as well. I mean, you mentioned around teams that are above us in the table. There's quite a lot of them, isn't there? You have to scroll a fair way down the table to find us right now as well. So yeah, I get the general comment. I mean, what he said there around, I didn't think Luton were too bad. I didn't think we were too bad in isolation at times. But, we've seen the same thing most weeks, where we aren't dynamic, we aren't watertight at the back, and we're not getting the results that we want. So, I can understand a perspective of an opposition fan, but obviously we see it on a weekly basis, and it's pretty average these days, isn't it?
Yeah, we mentioned in the last episode that, I thought we were pretty good in that opening 30 minutes or so before, obviously, the missed penalty. But you could see there was a slightly more confidence. And Jordan Clark mentioned it in his interview. He said that everyone has bought in, which is obviously first and foremost what we need is for them to have bought into Wilshere. and you'd like to think the results will come with that, because that 30 minutes we started the game off with, we did play some good football. We had a few chances. We hit the post. We went close a couple of times, and we were. I think the main thing I noticed in that game was that there was a bit more variety in how we were trying to attack. We weren't just trying to shift everything out wide and get a cross into the box or cut inside, and we weren't so heavily reliant on the wings that we limited ourselves elsewhere. And you could see we were trying to play stuff through the middle as well. It just didn't really work with the players we had on. But had we scored that penalty, I think it would have been a different game, and I think we probably would have lifted us a lot more. But because at the moment it's a side that doesn't feel very confident, you could tell that their sort of confidence dropped pretty much immediately after that penalty miss, and that's how we went and lost the game. But I like to think that going into Saturday against Northampton, it'll be a clean slate almost. It feels like, because we have so many sort of fairly new players in the squad. I was looking at Shader Morris's Instagram post from training, and I know it's just a photo and it's hard to take anything too much from it, but the players seem happy together in training. I think that's a massive positive. The fact that they seem relaxed around each other and off the pitch, I guess, when they're sort of the pressure's off, they seem to be gelling, and I think that is crucial.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And one of the reasons I think the season so far is so disappointing is because we saw a lot of content pre-season, specifically the trip to Slovenia, the training camp, the togetherness, and how new players that we'd signed at that point were really gelling into the squad. And you thought, this feels like a fresh start. It feels different. But obviously, when you step onto the pitch and challenges are there, that's a very different scenario, isn't it? To playing with your teammates in training. Uh, again, I said it a bit more critically at the weekend to the people sitting around me, but how much challenge do our defenders get from our attackers in training? Because we're not fluid right now with patterns of play. Whereas they step onto the pitch and all of a sudden our defenders have a challenge from opposition attackers. Things like that, and I think that's probably a fair point. So yeah, I mean, it is. We do need time for Wilshere's ideas and philosophy to bed in. And as I said the other night, I think now is the time where we have to probably adjust our expectations, because it may well take a few games for us to see real differences, to maybe get that first win under Wilshere, and by that point you're probably adrift from the top two, and you could be further away from the playoffs as well. So as much as I've been sitting here for weeks saying, minimum top six, we are extremely fragile, and this may well be a season that we're all going to not want, but it could well be that kind of mid-table mediocrity, which is a shame. But what can you do about it as a fan that's just watching?
But for a lot of sides, obviously that consolidation season within a division, particularly after you've gone through what we've gone through over the last sort of 18 months of back-to-back relegations, maybe a consolidation season wouldn't be, and I'm saying this through gritted teeth with very much rose-tinted glasses on, and that is, wouldn't be the worst thing. It'd give Wilshere time to assess the squad, get his system in place, make the changes he wants to in the transfer windows he needs. But obviously, I don't want the aim to be consolidation season. I want the aim to be getting out of this division at the first time of asking, not just for where we are in terms of against compared to other sides, but where we are for the sake of the club itself. Because with the new stadium coming, we do need to be in the Championship when that eventually happens. And if we've got a few seasons to settle there as well, once we get back up there, it will benefit us much more, because there will be sort of a more established squad that's prepared for that division, and people will be able to be confident in the fact they won't be going every week and watching defeats against other Championship sides.
Yeah, but the reality is right now we are 9 points off of second place. We are 8 points off of the top six, and we're 4 points above the relegation zone. Now, if ever there was a a reminder that this season, as much as we want success, we've got to make sure we are no way near another battle at the bottom end of the table. And I don't for 1 second think we will be. I genuinely think we have way, way more quality than teams that are going to be down there. But we've seen it before with losing habits. So yeah, we're a quarter of the way into the season, but rule number one, or objective number one, is get yourself enough points to be nowhere near the bottom of the table. And it's so bad that we're saying that after 12 games, in all honesty, isn't it? But the table doesn't lie, and they always say look at a table after 10, 12 games. Well, we are at that point now, and it's telling a fairly accurate story, to be honest.
Yeah, it is, and we'll talk a bit more about the side we're facing this weekend coming now, because it is a Northampton side with a very well established core of players, and a lot of players that will be familiar to Luton fans who watch a lot of EFL football and who remember being sort of back down in League One and League Two, because they have a settled side. So I just wanted to go through some of the key players, and also before that though, the last three meetings between us and Northampton, I hadn't realised it, but we've lost the last three games against them, which isn't ideal when you think about it on paper. We haven't played them since April 2016, when we lost 2-0 away from home against them, and then before that we lost in December 2015, 4-3 at home, which Adam was just talking about off camera. He remembers that quite well, that game specifically. Just tell us what it was you remember about that game.
I remember John Joe O'Toole playing and being an absolute handful, and I'm pretty sure he scored. But I vividly remember Northampton making a substitution, and then all the Luton fans saying, yeah, as they do, who, when the stadium announcer calls out the guy's name coming on, and then within about 30 seconds, this guy had picked up the ball and slammed it in the top corner. And that just, I'll never forget that, because it always taught me never to jeer on a substitution, even if you don't know who they are, because they will, undoubtedly stick one in the top corner. And that was an extremely quick turnaround in that scenario.
Yeah, you mentioned John Joe O'Toole. He's a player that he just is such an EFL player. If you ever think about sort of League One, League Two, he's the player that always springs to mind. The player you mentioned there, Ricky Holmes, was the one who scored after coming off the bench.
Yes.
He came on in the 69th minute and scored in the 70th minute.
There you go.
Also,
So, yeah.
in their squad that day, he came off the bench, was Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He came off the bench in the 90th minute, so didn't really have the opportunity to do anything. But I was just looking at the side we lined up with that day, and it sort of takes you back a bit, because across our team we had Tyler, Griffiths, Lawless, Smith, McCall Smith and Benson. That was the sort of the core of the team, and just think how long ago that feels when you look at that.
It feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? But I reckon that 11 could give some of ours a good go now, which is a painful thing to say. But yeah, I mean, Magnus Okuwongai. And this must have been the season Northampton won League Two and we missed out on the playoffs altogether. So probably John Steele's last season. But yeah, Magnus Okuwongai, Luke Wilkinson, Ryan Hall came off the bench. Geez, there's some names there that you didn't necessarily think you'd read again. Ironically, one player that was on the bench for us that didn't come on was Cameron McGeehan, and he is a very much a main player for Northampton right now this season as well, albeit I think injured at the moment. So yeah, McGeehan was someone I really loved watching play. Kind of in my 20s watching Luton, always seemed to be that kind of League One, League Two Lampard type player, attacking mid, eye for goals, and real grit and determination. So I don't think we'll see him at the weekend, but hopefully when they come to us, whenever that fixture is later in the season, he'll get a really good reception from Luton fans.
Yeah, he's their second top scorer at the moment with 2 goals. So obviously not loads, but their top scorer is Sam Hoskins, and he's someone that is very, very well known in League One. And he's got 4 goals so far this season. Bearing in mind he's been playing at wing back. And I was listening to Not the Top 20 yesterday when I was sat on my lunch break at work, and he's now scored over 100 goals for Northampton, having signed for them in July 2015 on a free transfer. So he's got 101 goals in 432 appearances, including 4 this season, and he started 11 out of 12 matches he's played this season. So he is sort of the main man for Northampton, and I think most of what they do comes through him, and I don't think Northampton fans would disagree with that. Another player who is sort of pretty well established now in the EFL is Nesta Guinness-Walker. He was obviously at Reading whilst they had a lot of issues under their previous owners. He was then at Stevenage from January 2024 to May 2024. And now he's been at Northampton for a little while and he's played 39 games. He's much more defensive on that left wing-back position. So I guess he's the reason Hoskins is allowed to sort of roam a bit more. What I did think was interesting about him, he made his professional debut for Metropolitan Police FC.
Wow. Okay. Well, if you'd have asked me that quiz question, I'd never have got that in a million years. So, yeah, fair play to that. But they have got they've got a pretty decent squad in all honesty. I hadn't necessarily realised until looking tonight some of the players they do have. I mean, Jordan Willis, centre half, someone that we were linked with. I think that when we were in our kind of early championship days, so a few years back, I think he was released by Coventry or something like that. So he's a good player. Obviously playing tonight as well. Obviously we mentioned McGeehan, Michael Jacobs, attacking mid, another good player, and then obviously you've mentioned Hoskins as one of their forwards or wingers. But the one that stands out to me is the mountain of Tom Eaves, who has seemed to cause us no end of problems whenever we've played him. I think he was at Hull, wasn't he? And Rotherham, and I'm sure there's a couple of other teams that he's played for against us, and he's always been an absolute nightmare to defend against. So, yeah, given our defensive frailties, I would be very pleased if he is not in their squad at the weekend. So we'll have to see kind of how that pans out.
Yeah, I don't think he's a key man there anymore. They've got Ethan Wheatley up front, who's the youngster on loan from Manchester United, who scored for them in their last match. At the time of recording, obviously, they're playing at the moment. But I was just wanting to look a bit more at sort of how they play, and I was looking at they've got the joint most clean sheets in the league on 6, which shows they're clearly set up very, very solidly under Kevin Nolan to defend, which is not surprising given who some of the managers he played for in his career, Sam Allardyce in particular there. But their XG is, and I know people quite often hate when people talk about XG, but it does talk a little bit about what the sort of thing they're doing, because their XG is 11.6 total, which is 21st in the division. They've had the 23rd highest number of shots on target per match, and they're 24th in accurate passes per match. So
I thought that was us.
Clearly, well, yeah, they clearly. And let's look a bit closer at that, because I was looking at that and thinking, oh, where are we? And we're 11th in that as well. So we're actually surprisingly good in that stat, which I was pretty surprised about, to be honest.
Yeah.
The area they seem strongest in is obviously defensively, which is something we could only dream about right now. They concede 0.9 goals per match, which is the 4th best in the division. And obviously with those 6 clean sheets, we will have to try something a bit different to break them down. And it does make you wonder, where are our goals coming from? Because we do seem to have such an issue with scoring at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you've spoken about their XG, and I know you love these stats, but you've probably jinxed them now, and they're going to go and score 4 against us at the weekend and make a mockery of those statistics. But yeah, I'm looking at the table now, and you're right. 11 goals conceded in 13. Only Cardiff in first, Stevenage in second, Lincoln in 6th have conceded fewer. Everybody in the league, apart from Stevenage, have conceded double digits. So, pretty much every team is averaging at least 1 goal a game. So it goes to show you what the league is like, and that no one's exactly watertight, but there are a handful of teams that are. Northampton being one of them. Obviously, the issue we've just seen here is the fact that they don't score many goals. They've only scored 10, and by a very quick glance, that is all bar Peterborough and Burton, the fewest in the league. So it's not it doesn't take Albert Einstein to work out where their issues are. But we are a team that are struggling to create opportunities, struggling to make an impact in the final third of the pitch, and we're going to be up against a team that have the foundations and the solidity. So, if we didn't think it, then just that information alone suggests that we're going to be in for a tough afternoon in what is a fairly local game, and it's going to be a bit like Stevenage, where a lot of their fans are looking at this and going, Luton at home, biggest game of the season, and that's not. It's not blowing smoke up ourselves, but that is a fact that there probably won't be any bigger league games, particularly for them at home, than Luton when it's I don't know how many miles between the two places, but not many at all. So it does remind me a lot of how I felt before we went to Stevenage, with not a lot of hope or optimism, and hoping that our players get up for it. Do I trust them to get up for it? Do I trust them to put in a performance? I'm struggling to feel that we're going to go there and get 3 points, if I've been brutally honest.
I mean, I'd like to think it will almost be a fresh start. Wilshere will have had another week with the players to sort of clear that loss against Mansfield from their systems. But as the person who commented on our recent videos said, that this division is much stronger than I think a lot of us expected it to be. And last time we were here, obviously under Nathan Jones, we walked it a little bit, but that was a particularly different circumstances to what most teams do in this division, bar Birmingham and Wrexham last season, when they just had a ridiculous budget compared to the rest of the league. This division this season isn't a division that's got some massive teams that have got standout squads compared to what everyone else has, but it's got a lot of very solid sides with squads that have been around for quite a while together, and I think that's where we differ in a way. We haven't got that squad of players who've played together for 3 or 4 seasons together. We have got a bit of a mishmash side.
Yeah, we do. And the last time we were in League One, when we waltzed it, it's because bar Accrington having an amazing season, we'd smashed League Two as well, and then we went up with a squad that were way better than League Two. And that is evident by the fact that a lot of them played for us in the Championship. Elliot Lee, Berry, Shinnie, etc. They were so ready for League One. You go up with the confidence, which is the polar opposite of what we've come down without. And we didn't really need to add loads. I might be proven wrong, but I don't remember us going mental in the transfer window that summer. We just added the right personnel, the right changes, and went again. And again, something that was evident there was when obviously Nathan went to Stoke, Mick Harford took over and didn't need to do anything in all honesty. And Mick will attest to that himself. He didn't change anything. He just steered the ship, or kept steering it in the right direction. Everybody knew their job, their responsibilities, and we, basically waltzed our way to the league title, didn't we? So, yeah, it's a shame that we are on the opposite end of the scale as we sit in League One right now. But it's also nice to reminisce on nice times before.
Yeah, we've been doing a bit of that there. I was just looking at sort of that, obviously that season where Jones left us for Stoke initially, when he left on a 58% win percentage that season. When Harford came in, he actually got a 60% win percentage that season. So we almost kicked on and were even better at that stage, albeit with less games to go. But it was very, very different to what we're seeing now. And if you look at sort of what Wilshere has taken over, we won 5 games, lost 5 games, and drew 1 so far in League One this season under Bloomfield, which is 45%, which on paper you would look at and think that's not that bad. But as a side that's been that's been relegated from the Premier League and the Championship, it should not be anywhere near that number. It should be a lot higher. And obviously Wilshere's come in and he's had to take on a squad that's really got used to losing over the last few games. We still haven't won since that Doncaster game, and that was a pretty lucky result at the end of the day. So it is a case of coming in and really having to turn things around and having that, try and instill that feeling of a fresh start with the players.
Yeah, and as you said, like if we were stepping up from League Two, and our ambitions were, well, yeah, wouldn't it be lovely to get a top six place or to consolidate in League One? Then you look at the table now and you think fine, but we are that is just not has been our scenario, has it? We've the frustration being that we've seen 18 months of disappointment. Now you could look at the last 6 months of the Premier League season and think, it was still enjoyable because we were putting up a good fight and we were always going to be down there. But certainly the last 12 months has been a particularly dark time for everyone associated to the club, and we need something to push us back in the right direction. The only thing I can think that's going to do that are wins. I don't, we can't wait until January and try and change a lot of the playing squad because we did that in the summer. In theory, January, and we'll talk about that way down the line, but January you're probably going to be looking at maybe 3 or 4 in and a couple out. It's not going to be wholesale changes, so you've got to get a tune out of what we've got now, and we've got to start getting wins to make sure that this season doesn't become any more uncomfortable than it is right now.
Yeah, and just finally, before we go to a break, to touch on what you said there about teams coming up from League Two and kicking on. If you look at the sides that came up from League Two last season, so there's Doncaster, Port Vale, Bradford, and AFC Wimbledon, and look at where they are now, they're all doing really, really well for promoted sides. Obviously, the lowest there being Port Vale, who are 18th, the highest Bradford 3rd, followed by Wimbledon in 4th, and then you've got Doncaster in 12th. So they're all clearly kicking on from last season. They've continued that sort of positivity that they came into the season with, and they're kicking on and almost getting results where we've been relegated and are doing the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can put the squads next to each other on paper and you'd look at it and go, yes, we have more quality and more experience. But it doesn't mean anything unless you have identity and togetherness and something about you. I wouldn't say we were lucky to beat Doncaster, but we were still playing in the corner flag in injury time to try and scrape a win. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean a lot, does it, when you just list a squad on paper and say, well, we should have a divine right to be in the top two, because it just doesn't work like that.
We're going to go to a quick break now, but when we get back, we'll be looking at what you'd like to see in the starting lineup against Northampton on Saturday, and we'll also be doing some predictions. Listen up, Kenilworth Road faithful. Don't miss Coventry City take on our annoying neighbours from down the road, Watford, this weekend, live on Sky Sports with Now. Coventry are top of the Championship with 31 goals from 11 games and 5 wins in their last 5 games, and they'll be massive favourites against Watford. Look out for Brandon Thomas Asante and Hadji Wright, who have both already got 8 goals this season. And you can catch all the live action on Sky Sports with a Now membership. Don't miss a moment. You can stream Sky Sports on Now flexibly, like Coventry City versus Watford this weekend. Search nowtv.com. Welcome back to the Oak Road Hatter podcast. You're still joined by me, Finley Cannon, and Adam Driscoll, as we talk all things Luton's visit to Northampton. And we asked on Twitter, ahead of Saturday's trip to Northampton, who would you change from the side that started against Mansfield? And we've had a lot of feedback on that, and there's been a lot of different takes. It's clear people want a lot of changes from that side, and not surprising, really, given I guess you could call it capitulation, really, because it was a bit. And we'll go for a couple of them, because there's some really interesting opinions in there. So Graham Sharp says, keep Clarkey, no one else in the squad has recently made themselves irreplaceable. So bung any 10 of them in together and just go for it. Mr. BT88 says, we all wanted a back 4. Let's go back to a back 3 because we have gone to shit since the change, but let's be more offensive. No point leaving one striker up top all in zone. Maybe put Nordas, Wells or Yates up top together. Clicker and Saville in the middle. Ali Morris wide, which is very, very attacking when you look at it on paper and doesn't really give us the base to defend with. And Martin says, stop with the 4. We don't have competent, capable fullbacks at the club to play that shape. we have to stop with the square pegs in round holes, otherwise this misery will continue. So there's a real sort of mixture there, and a lot of people actually, a surprising amount of people actually saying maybe the back four isn't working, and that's with the players we've got available. And I guess you can kind of see where they're coming from in that sense, but it depends who you're putting into that system if you are going to a back three. The biggest issue we've got at the moment is those fullbacks. Bramall is a left back and can play there. It is just that right back problem where we just do not have a player fit. And we've spoken about it before, but Walters is returning from injury, he's not back yet. Jones can play there, it doesn't seem like he'll be back yet. And then Longwyke is in and out of the side, but isn't really a natural fullback, it doesn't seem like.
Yeah, and I don't think either of the two formations are the problem. It's the personnel, isn't it? As you've said, left side fine because Bramall can play either left back or left wing back, and I think he has to. We can't persist with just playing 4 centre halves across the back line, and one of them happens to be left footed, so he can play left back. I can't quite see that. It's just not working. The right side's the problem. We have right-sided defenders at the club, but they're not fit. So we seem to speak about this every week, and I get it because it's obviously a very relevant point. But Walters isn't fit, Izzy Jones isn't fit, Odoffin can play there, isn't fit. Other players that we have that could potentially play the right wing back slot and it hasn't worked. You've had Lomvik in there, Shaden Morris for a little bit, Kadua, and it just doesn't work. So I don't look at it and go, well, it's the three at the back that doesn't work or the back four. It's just the squad is unbalanced. We don't have a natural, in my opinion, we don't have a natural right back or a natural right wing back within the squad. I think Izzy Jones probably is the closest thing, and that would be as a right wing back. But I think, again, I'd rather see him higher up the pitch. I'd rather see him when he's back playing the wide right of a front three. I think he's better there. I think Kadua is the same. Shaden Morris is the same. So yeah, I think the crucial thing for me in January is that we decide the formation we want to play, back four or back five, and we go out and we sign someone that is going to play on that right hand side in whatever position it's going to be. I would imagine that will be something that Wilshere and the new staff will very quickly have picked up on. And obviously I hope they follow through with getting someone that can do that, because all of a sudden I think that will address the imbalance in the squad, and you would hope from there that we can see something different at the end of the day.
And do you think we still need to be bringing in a new right back, even if Walters is back? And obviously we've heard that Hakeem Odoffin can play at right back as well. And I think when fit, he might be the long-term option there until Walters is able to develop a bit more. It just depends what sort of that fitness is, because we have got those players that just don't seem to be able to stay fit.
See, I think Odoffin is here to play as a holding midfielder, because I think that's what he's done more recently at Rotherham and has done really, really well from all the information that I've seen online. That's the impression I get. So I think even if Walters is fit, and even if you've got Jones, Morris, Kadua, like, you've got to go out and sign another right back. I'm 99% sure that Wilshere is going to go with a long-term formation of a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 or whatever, but it's going to be a back four. And right now, Ruel Walters, for me, is the only right back we have at the club. So I do think it's crucial that we go out and we get someone else that can play that position.
It feels like it's been a bit of a problem position for a little while now. Obviously, when we got promoted from the Championship, we had a loanee in there, and then in Cody Drammer, and then in the Premier League, we had another loanee in there in Issa Kabore, and we then moved Ogbene to right wing back to sort of fill that void as well. And it just seems to be a position we've never consistently been able to fill. And it is weird because there are so many right backs, or it feels like there's so many right backs that are constantly knocking around in the EFL. Walters is actually pretty highly rated according to a lot of neutrals and Arsenal fans as well really rated him highly, and I'm sure he is a good player. We just haven't seen him consistently in that setup.
Yeah, and something to point out as well is that when Walters played under Wilshere in the Arsenal 18s, he played as a centre back. So, is Wilshere going to look at Walters and go, "Well, you're not a right back. I know you're not a right back. Naturally, you're going to be my right-sided centre half," which would definitely say we need another right back. So that's going to be an interesting one when Walters comes back in as to where Wilshere does slot him in. Personally, right now, I think our centre half pairing of Anderson and Mengi is far too slow and static. So if Walters was back fit, I would be putting him in instead of one of those two, because you need something a bit different. You need the pace that someone like Walters can bring. And that's been the frustration for me as well in recent weeks, that Makossa has been playing right back. So as someone else that is shoehorned into right back, he's not a right back. He's a centre half, and he's got the attributes of a centre half because he's tall and he's quick. So we're playing him out of position, and this obviously isn't off. This isn't a go at Wilshere for Saturday, but we've been playing Makossa at right back, and he's just not that. And then not only are you playing him out of position, but you're then taking away his centre half attributes and playing Mengi and Anderson together that are like two broken down cars, and it's just it's no wonder teams play through us. There's obviously a lot of things I've just mentioned there, but essentially we need a right back.
Yeah, I was just looking at a few more of the comments on the post about sort of the positions and the setup, and I'm really surprised, but a lot of people seem to want Saville to be dropped, which for me, I think he's one of a few players in the side, him and Clark, maybe Keeley, that you can't really take out the side at the moment. I think he does give us that really, really combative option in midfield, and I think he is a good base for other midfielders to play off. And I know people disagree; they don't think he's been good enough recently, but I think he has to be in the side when you've got Clark in there, unless you're bringing in someone like Nakamba, who we haven't seen for more than about 10 minutes in a league fixture yet this season.
Yeah, and there's probably a reason for that, because I don't think Nakamba is built anymore for more than probably half an hour, and that's only so good to you, isn't it? So yeah, I mean Saville's an interesting one. I go to the games with my dad, and he said something about Saville along those lines at the weekend, and I thought I think it's a bit harsh, because as a defensive minded midfielder, someone who's like sweeping up, he's going to get the ball and then he's going to look forward and think, what's going on in front of me? And I don't think he does anything wrong with how he sweeps up. He puts himself into tackles, probably a bit too hard sometimes, but that's the player he is. But he's getting the ball and looking ahead of him. And what exactly is going on ahead of him? There's nothing going on ahead of him. You've got one of our forwards, whether it's a Yates or Wells, that are just kind of running around a bit aimlessly. You've got a wide man in Millie Alley who doesn't know whether he's coming or going. So there's nothing going on in front of Saville when he gets the ball that means that he can dictate the game the way he wants to and the way he should be. And I don't think that's a criticism on him. So yeah, I would keep playing Saville. I think he is still an important player for us. I just want to see different things happening in front of him to make him that bit more effective as well.
And do you think that third player in there with Clark and Saville is the issue? We've tried Fane recently, and he seems to have established himself a little bit more in the last few games. He was really good against Doncaster, and then sort of like everyone else, he seems to have dropped off since then. He's only been able to show what he can do in flashes and then goes missing a bit. But if you look at his sort of raw ability and his raw physicality, he's clearly a very, very good player. He's just another one of those options that's low in confidence, but he's someone who needs to be on the ball, driving forward. And I guess he gives us a bit more balance in there. Another player who I think we actually are missing, and I know he's a player that a lot of people criticise, but it's Liam Walsh. I think when he's in a side, he gives you a bit more balance in midfield, and he'll sit deep and he'll sort of move the ball forwards without him driving forward himself. And it gives players like Clark a bit more freedom.
I knew you were going to say Walsh. Do you know what? I was just sitting there struggling to think of who our midfielders are that are missing, that are injured, and obviously, like Baptiste is a long-term injury. I think this season could have been massive for him and for his impact on us, but clearly we're not going to see him again this season, which is really bad. Um, Fane is a mind boggler because I don't know what he is. He just seems to be like he doesn't have the same attributes as Saville as a holding midfielder because he doesn't really put himself in as much and have the grittiness. But then he's not the progressive centre midfielder that wants to kick on forward that like Jordan Clark is. So I'm a bit confused as to exactly what his role is in the middle of the pitch. So I don't know what's going to happen with that one in the long term. I mean, I don't think he has a long term future at the club. If I'm being honest, um, there will be a time where we probably cut our losses on him, and I'm not sure when that will be, but that's how I really see that going. But I actually do agree with you, and I've slated the bloke, but I think the one player we are missing is Walsh because I think he is that midfielder that is a bit of everything. He does sometimes too aggressively, as we know, put himself about. He's got a very good passing range, and he does get up the pitch as well. So he's the one that I really think will slot into to Wilshere's midfield three, and you'd have that three of Saville, Walsh, and Clark, hopefully for the foreseeable future.
And then just one more position I wanted to ask you about was that striker position, because I think it's very clear that Luton fans don't want to see Wells starting there anymore from his performance on Saturday, which was a poor performance all round. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. It then raises the question who we do want there, because are we playing two up there, or are we playing one up there with wingers either side? And if we're playing one, someone who seems to have come up a few times in the comments on our post is Joe Bode, and I guess he's sort of the wild card option a bit. He was brought in from League Two, and he's very inexperienced. But on the couple of occasions when he has come into the side off the bench, he looks very strong and very quick, and he's able to hold the ball up. And at the moment, it doesn't feel like we've got anyone in the side who has been able to do that.
Yeah, I think this striker role at the moment is a poison chalice. I actually feel sorry for our forwards, and I say that because where is their supply? We can sit here and criticise Wells, and he had a really poor game. He obviously missed a penalty and gave the ball away for the Reece Oates goal. But where's the supply into these guys? They don't become bad strikers overnight. And Jerry Yates, we spoke when we signed him about his statistics around goals in the box. Like a huge percentage of his goals over the past 3 or 4 seasons had come from being like inside the box or 6 yard box. So he's getting the supply. Naki Wells scored, I think, 8, 10 goals in the Championship last season. Will have been getting the supply from the likes of Mehmeti and Twine and whoever else at Bristol City. We aren't giving our forwards the supply. We are. If the ball's getting that far up the pitch, we're losing it before it gets to those guys, or we're lumping it in previous weeks, lumping it up to them as well. So I do think one of them will click, and one of them will probably cement the position. But it has to come from again the what is happening between the likes of Saville's position and the main striker. What are we doing in that section of the pitch with creativity and impact to give these guys half a chance? So I'm not going to write any of them off just yet, but obviously when you get a penalty, you've got to score it. So that is one thing that we will need to address and definitely sort out.
Yeah, the striker position is, alongside the right back position, the one that seems to be causing the most problems at the moment, because we just aren't scoring those goals consistently from that area of the pitch. And I agree. I think when there is one of the striker options we've got cements themselves as the starting option and really kicks on in front of goal, I think they'll be hard to displace. And I think it will give us a lot more balance elsewhere, because we'll be able to sort of build a side behind that is able to support them a bit better. I think Morris, hopefully coming back from his minor knock at the weekend, is very positive, because he is someone that can take players on and really drive past them and get balls into the box. It's just whether we have that final product to get a player, maybe Yates, maybe someone else, the ball in the box so they can put it away.
Yeah, absolutely. As much as Millie Ali has been really disappointing, I think you have to persist because you've just got to give him the opportunity to get that confidence back and for it to click. He's not been terrible, but he's just not been what we expect. So you got to get that working. For me, if Shaden Morris is back fit soon, I know there were questions around whether he's a 90-minute man, but you've got to play him, even if he starts every game and plays an hour. Like that for me is crucial. And I still say Ali and Morris wide of one of our forwards is the right way to go. Now, obviously, I could have egg on my face in 3 weeks or 4 weeks when that is apparent that it's like the complete opposite. But I do stand by, if we are going to play a 4-3-3, that front three needs to be Ali, Morris, and a forward, and we get supply into that forward.
Yeah, and having that midfield base, as we spoke about, gives someone like Clark the option to get forward and feed that striker as well. Before we finish, we're going to do some predictions. So we'll start with you, Adam. We'll get a prediction for the trip to Northampton.
Well, I can't turn around now and say we're going to win because everything I've said tonight is detrimental to that. I do think we'll get something. Wilshere's not going to go back to back. I'm going to be positive in that sense. So I am going to go for a 1-1 draw. Let's go 1-1, firmly sitting on the fence, and we'll take a point away from Sixfields.
I am going to try and be optimistic here, and I'm going to go for a 2-1 win, and I think it will be Jack Wilshere's first win in charge of the Hatters against the Cobblers, not as the stadium announcer thought on Saturday, the Saints, because they are not a football team and they play up the road. But we would love to know your score predictions and any opinions you have from what we've discussed in today's episode. So let us know in the comments or on social media at ORH Hatter. From myself and from Adam, thank you very much for listening. And if you want any more content from us, check out oakroadhatter.com, where you can find all of our written articles and merch and much more.